Losing a limb or being born without one has a profound effect on how a person lives their life. I'm Bobby Potriff, and this is Newsmakers. My guests today are Jeff Arnett, owner of Progressive Prosthetics and Orthotics, and Elizabeth Flo, a certified orthotist. Thanks for joining me, you guys. So April is Limb Loss and Limb Difference Awareness Month, and you all deal with this all year long, years long, I guess. Tell me, what is the most important thing people should know about someone who has lost a limb? Jeff, we'll start with you.
Well, the most important thing is that you're not alone, that there are thousands of amputations annually, and to understand that it changes how you function in life, but it doesn't change who you are or limit your abilities. You just have to relearn some things for a normal daily activity.
And normal is different for everyone, right?
Normal is different for everyone.
Elizabeth, what got you into this line of work?
So I spent 3.5 years in Kenya. And so what got me into this was actually my work over in Kenya, working with amputees over there.
Okay. And what took you to Kenya? Was it the job or?
So I have a long passion for those with special needs, and God's called me to help them lead a more normal life and to show them the love of Christ. And so that pulled me into Kenya.
That's
I
great.
fell in love with the people.
And Jeff, you have, your company is over in Kenya, right? In Ghana?
We've done some work in Ghana with another agency, but my company is currently in Nigeria.
Okay.
We've been there since 2013. We've treated to date about 600 amputees. The goal is, what we're working on right now is we're working with some of the universities in the educational process to create a residency program and to create a viable market for prosthetics in Nigeria. You'll hear about a lot of mission-based nonprofit organizations that are doing things. The problem with prosthetics, it's a lifelong need. You don't just give somebody one prosthesis and they're good for life.
Right.
And so what we're trying to do in Nigeria is create a sustainability training program where Nigerians will provide services to Nigerians through Nigerians. And so it's been a labor of love, because you can imagine transporting anything to a third world country is hard.
Yeah.
But we've established a clinic there. We have 7 people that we've trained in prosthetics. So during this pandemic that we've had, I've not been able to go from March when I was supposed to go and the trip got canceled until I finally went this January. But during that whole time, they treated 105 amputees. And what we did is pretty much online, working with the patients, WhatsApping, being able to take video and communication directly with the clinicians there on the ground. And like I said, they treated over 120 amputees during that duration.
And are the prosthetics made over there?
They're actually fabricated on site.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And when you fabricate them here, do you guys do them at your business, or how does
Some
that
things
work?
yes, we actually do all of our own fabrication in-house. Certain aspects, because of OSHA and FDA, are done differently, so some labs are built to do some of the laminations and other things, but we do fabrication at all sites.
And you have how many offices in the area?
6 clinics.
Okay.
We have 3 in the immediate area. We are actually here in Joplin, directly across the street from Freeman Hospital in the Eye Center, right on the corner of McClellan and 32nd, right across from McDonald's. We also have an office in Grove, Oklahoma, and another clinic in the hospital outpatient physical therapy in Pittsburgh, Kansas.
Okay. And you work in the Tulsa office or here in Joplin, or just you spread your time out?
As the owner of the company, because I have other employees, I tend to travel from office to office. So on any given week, like I'm in Joplin on Mondays on a regular basis, I do a clinic in Grove on Tuesdays, and then every other Thursday I'm in my office in Wichita.
And Elizabeth, you're a recent transplant to the Joplin area.
Yes.
Tell us where you came from.
So I grew up in North Carolina, and God called me out here, and so in September I came out here to work with prosthetics and orthotics.
And how do you like the area?
It's definitely has a lot of growth.
Yeah.
There's a lot of new buildings. There's been a lot of revitalization of areas that the tornado clear-cutted, basically.
Right.
So it's a really nice area, and I'm enjoying getting to know people.
Well, good. And Jeff, speaking of the tornado, there were several people, maybe hundreds, I'm not sure the number, you might have a better idea of that, who lost a limb after the tornado, whether it was because they were injured or got sick. Talk about that.
Well, as far as actual losing the limb as a direct result of the tornado, I'm not familiar with how many there are. I know as a clinician I've had 2 or 3 that I know that actually lost a limb from the tornado. Mostly what you see is secondary issues due to delayed care because of the tornado. I mean, Mercy had a horrendous hit, and that delayed the care because Mercy had to reestablish. They created a triage, and they were able to get quickly back functional on the ground, but actually long-term care took about 35 to 45 days to establish the various clinics that were in the hospital on the ground. I think they were in 17 different sites throughout the city, if I recall correctly.
Right.
And they were scattered abroad, which made interfacing with everything difficult at best because they had to reestablish the entire network of communication, referral sources, clinics, equipment. And the Red Cross did a lot with that for them in fast emergency buildings and establishing some things.
And you said that there was also, because of that, the shift in services. Freeman was overwhelmed, and then people had to be farmed out to other locations.
Communities, yes.
Yeah, and that was just all like a trickle-down thing.
It was.
Yeah.
And, Joplin was not the only place affected. As I told you earlier, our clinic was flooded in Grove. I had 12 inches of water. And unlike a tornado that's an act of God, rain is a flood, and we didn't have flood insurance. And so it took us 90 days to rebuild that. But because I had satellite clinics and wound care centers and places around here, we were able to maintain some contact and referred it out there. So.
And talk about the costs involved in making a prosthetic limb.
That's a very variable thing. It's kind of
Right.
like, for lack of a better example, it's kind of like a car. You can get a basic model car, but then there's other add-ons that make that car,
Like a Lexus or a BMW.
like a Lexus or a BMW
Yeah.
or even a Maserati.
Right.
A car is designed to get you from point A to B. So a better description of that is K-level function.
Oh.
And K-level function means I'm an ambulator, I'm not an ambulator, I'm a community ambulator. And when you look at insurance companies, they govern it based on that K-level rating. And so you and I would be high K2 to high K3, depending on what our activities are. But most patients are a K3 level functional. And what that means is instead of a Chevrolet, you might get a Cadillac.
Right.
But insurance dictates that a lot as well.
Okay.
So, for instance, all your Medicaid beneficiaries that are getting their services through Medicaid need to know that Medicaid only pays for 4 actions in a lifetime. So when you get a prosthesis, it's not the cost as much as it is the utilization of your plan and what the plan covers. So,
So it's not just like, say $5,000 and this is your leg and that's what you get for life. There are things involved like mechanics of it and parts that need serviced and.
Correct. So probably a good average, if you were looking at a below knee amputation, which means that your leg is complete just post the knee, you're looking at somewhere between $8,500 and $25,000 depending on what you get. I mean, it can be even higher than that with the technologies out there. Microprocessor ankles, dynamic ankles, so that actually give you extension and flexion of the foot. Those things each one of those add cost.
And what's the typical, like, is it is it wood? Is it, what's it made out of?
So that's another really good question. We've come a long way from where we used to be, where everything was made out of wood and you basically needed a carpenter. But now it can be a mix of different resins, acrylics. There's different fibers they've used. There's been some fibers that were developed specifically for prosthetics. Other fibers like fiberglass and carbon fiber and things like that are used in multiple industries.
Right.
But we use them for structural stability and strength.
Okay.
So we also use a variety of different plastics. It just depends on what the need is. You know, back to that kind of that car analogy.
Right.
You know, do we need leather seats or do we need cloth seats?
Right.
What's the best for the patient and what their goals
So
and
it's
ambitions
a
are?
full picture, a full analysis, what the person does, what they want to do, and how far the leg will take them, basically.
Exactly.
And do you guys work with Limbs for Life?
We do. We're actually a donation site. Anybody that might have a prosthesis, because like we just said, it's not a one leg once in a lifetime. Generally speaking, in a lifetime of 20 to 30 years, you would have 5 to 7 legs provided to you, plus additional changes. So most of the legs that we provide are modular, and what that means is you can, kind of like an erector set, you can take a piece off, you can put a piece on. They're all interchangeable in what they do and function. And so with that, through the time, you'll have componentry that wears out. And so with that, those can be repurposed for an individual that doesn't have insurance.
Oh,
Like I told you about the Medicaid patients, if you had 4 legs, then Limbs for Life, once you hit that point, might be an approach that you can do that. The thing to keep in mind with Limbs for Life is they don't pay for the prosthesis. They donate the componentry, and we as a company or other providers donate our time.
Right.
So it's not an end all. It's best that if you can find an insurance policy or work with your prosthetist to kind of build that rapport to create that.
And what do you think is the biggest challenge faced by someone who loses a limb as opposed to someone who's born without it? So
I think the biggest challenge is the change in family, or the perceived. Is that going to? How's this affect my wife's life? How's this affects my husband's life? What can I expect? Am I going to be able to go back to work? Am I not going to be able to get back to work?
Right.
And any time you have, as we look at this month of limb loss awareness, education's the most important part, along with the emotional side of that. So if somebody in your group that's watching these shows is diabetic and knows they're going to have an amputation, then my recommendation is that they contact the amputee support group here in Joplin, 4 States Amputee Network. We started that group about 9 years ago. It's an independent group. It's not affiliated with any company, but there's amputees there. Amputee Coalition of America, which is helping sponsor this month of awareness, has what's called a peer visitation.
okay.
And there are people trained within that amputee network that are peer visitors, meaning that if you have a question, or if they want to contact one of the local companies, any one of the 3 companies that are here in town, I'm just one. There are 2 other companies, Joplin Prosthetics and Advanced Prosthetics. All of us are trained in the same techniques and applications, but it's about a relationship. So the most important part is that relationship that you as the individual amputee have with the provider, because it's an ongoing basis. If you had an amputation today, it usually takes about 8 to 12 weeks before you're ready for a prosthesis. Then we start the process of shrinkage and healing of the process, or compression therapy, because anytime you have an injury, your body swells up, and an amputation is an injury as far as the body is concerned. So there needs to be compression therapy to reduce the volume, to enhance the blood flow to the area, and to have a quick healing. So after that first 12 weeks, then you'd be evaluated to set your goals and establish those. But if you can come to your prosthetist, meet with your prosthetic provider or prosthetic providers that are here in town, then you can build a relationship and rapport with those particular providers, because they're going to be your advocate with your insurance companies, with your physicians, with your therapists, and you really need that team approach for the total care. They'll also be able to help you with people you can talk with family members, because although you're the individual losing the prosthesis, it's a loss for your family. It's pretty much like a death in the family. You go through the very same approaches:
Stages
denial,
of grief, right.
acceptance, anger. All of those things happen. And it's not just to the one having the amputation, it's to the spouse or the children. The fear of loss, the fear of what could happen. I mean, when you go to the surgery, the first thing they sign is, we're going to put you under, and you may not come out.
You could die, right.
It's just traumatic. As far as a child who is born with a limb deficiency, the parents need as much help psychologically with that, because there's always the feeling, was this my fault, or spina bifida, or any other debilitating childhood issues. CP is the most common neurological issue. Okay, well, what did I do to cause that? Probably nothing. But how do we get our child? The beauty about a child, if any of you have had children, you know that they overcome anything. Right. So we are aware of their limb loss, but they're not. To them, that's normal.
Yeah, it's just the way it is.
So early fitting on a child with a limb loss, if you want them to utilize the componentry and technology, the most common birth defect is a shortened arm. The most common, I can't remember what the diagnosis is of that. Elizabeth, do you know what that is?
Well, it's usually caused by umbilical cord, basically cutting off circulation.
Right.
And so that's the most common. And you've seen the people with they have the little fingers at the end, but it's as if it's no difference. And so early fitting on a child like that or without a leg gives them the ability to get up, crawl, and do what they need to do. Just know that there's going to be multiple changes throughout with the growth and volume changes that way. So they're going to change quite a bit.
So if any of our viewers want to get in contact with you, or people who have lost limbs and they need, I don't know, support or just information, how do they contact you?
Well, they could call us using our phone number, or they can go on our website at progressiveop.com.
Okay.
And there's videos and presentations of various applications. People who lost a leg to motorcycle accidents, to a car wreck. Those are the most common traumatic amputations. Sometimes you'll see in a skiing accident where somebody's gotten pulled into the rotor of a...
Oh, right.
I've had 2 or 3 patients that way. But mostly the number one reason for amputation is circulatory diabetes. And they have already probably experienced that, because most insurance companies will pay for diabetic shoes and inserts.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you guys coming on and talking to us about this.
April is Limb Loss and Limb Difference Awareness Month.
The 4 States Amputee Network works to enhance the quality of life for our friends and neighbors, their families, and support network. If you or someone you love has lost a limb or are at risk for amputation, you're invited to join us.
We're the 4 States Amputee Network, providing support, education, and care for the community.
We invite you to learn more during Limb Loss and Limb Difference Awareness Month.
Joining me now is Jason Istas. Hi, Jason. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
So it's pretty fitting that this is almost the 10th anniversary of the Joplin tornado, and April is limb loss and limb difference. You didn't lose your leg in the tornado, but you lost quite a bit. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, unfortunately, we weren't home at the time of the tornado. If we were, we would have been completely out of it. I think we got a little bit of rain up there, but we were actually at the Stained Glass Theater finishing up a show, and there was quite a few of us there. I had a couple grandkids there, and my wife was there. And when the tornado came through and blew the building down, we were kind of like huddled down. None of my grandkids really got hurt. One of them got a sprained ankle, or a wrist, sorry. Another one got a scratch. One of the grandkids was being held by Wendy, my wife, and he had a nail stuck in his head. Not very far. It was just a scratch, but it was enough to make it bleed.
Oh, yeah.
My wife, on the other hand, had a 2x4 hit her in the back and broke her back in 2 different places, and a nail was stuck in her head. So through all of this, what I lost wasn't anything off my body or anything, but I lost a wife, a job because we worked together, a church because we spent most of our time at the Stained Glass Theater. That was our ministry, and it was completely destroyed. But we were fortunate in the fact that nobody else in our family was really hurt.
And Wendy passed
3
how
weeks
many
later,
days? Yeah.
she passed away from sepsis. The nail in her head infected her body, and it stopped her heart, and she passed away from that. It was a kind of a long ordeal. It was about 10 days. So, yeah.
And about how long after all of that did you lose your leg?
I lost my leg about 3.5 years ago. And that was more from diabetes than anything else.
Right.
I stepped on a rock and broke my foot, broke my ankle, and shattered it basically. And they told me that it was going to take about 2.5 years for it to heal. And in the process, they were going to put a steel pin up through my ankle into my leg, and quite possibly not even work then. And instead of waiting for 2.5 years to go back to work, I told them to cut it off then.
Oh, okay.
So I also had some vein issues in my leg. There was some injuries that I've had before. So when he did cut it off, he cut it quite high to get rid of all those dead veins.
Right.
So I've got like a 4-inch stump now, but it's a below knee. So
Yeah. And I've heard about phantom limb syndrome. Do you have that?
I am a very strong advocate that it's not a phantom pain.
Right.
The pain is real.
Oh, yeah.
The phantom location is what it is. Because at any given time, my toe will hurt, my ankle will hurt, or my foot will get cold, and there's nothing there to rub, or you can't put anything on it. So you find the end of the stump where that nerve is and try and rub it.
Right.
A lot of times mine seem to be near the bone or in the middle somewhere, so I can't rub it.
And there's not really a treatment for that, right? You just have to deal with it.
Yeah.
And is it a mental connection that you have with what you've lost?
The thing is with that is your body knows where it's at. That nerve goes to something,
Right.
or used to go to something. So when that nerve is hurting, it knows that it's not here at your knee or your leg or whatever. It's down there somewhere. Even though it's not there anymore, that nerve is still saying, I know exactly where that's at.
Right.
Your GPS is telling me that it's right here, even though you can't get there because the bridge is out.
Right, in today's terms, right. And that's a good visual because people don't realize that.
Yeah.
And what's been the biggest change in your daily routine or your daily life since having lost your leg?
The biggest change is probably, well, it's getting better. But the biggest change is the freedom. Everything you used to do, everything you could do, you can no longer do it that way.
Right.
So I can't get up in the middle of the night and just run to the bathroom. I got to get up, put on my leg, put on this, put on that, and then hobble to the bathroom because I have one shoe on.
Right. And did you have to retrofit your house, or
Some.
how'd you?
Yeah, we had to open up a doorway to my bathroom and redo the flooring in it because, well, I'm kind of a big boy. And so when I was hopping in the bathroom, I've created some issues with the floor on that side, but this side was still good.
I gotcha.
So I had to remodel some of the bathroom, and we put in a ramp out front, a nice big deck and a ramp so I can get up and down when I was, before my leg. I was stuck in a wheelchair, and I'm a big boy, so going up the stairs is not easy.
Right.
And so they put in a ramp for me, and it helped.
Oh, good. And so besides the obvious physical issues that you've had to deal with, what about the mental component?
The mental component is vast. It just goes everywhere because now you are no longer independent. I want to do it this way. This is the way I've always done it. You can't do it that way anymore. So you have to learn how to do something that you used to do differently. And
Rely on other people.
One of the biggest things is relying on somebody. You know, you have to have somebody to help you open the doors. You have to have somebody help you get dressed. You know, whereas before it's like, no, just stay away from me. Now it's, okay, all right, go ahead and help me.
Yeah, you just have to give in to that
Right.
sometimes.
Yeah.
And do you still go through counseling? Does that help?
No, I never really did go through any counseling of any kind. I did a lot of my own searching. I have a very strong Christian family at St. Paul's. I've got a great family at my own family. I've got friends that at the prosthesis that help me out. And even today I get stuff in the mail. I don't know what it is, so I take it to them and they help me out with it. I never had to deal with this stuff before. Now I'm faced with it.
Right.
So I don't know what to do. So I go to somebody else who either has had it, knows about it, or can deal with it.
And something Jeff Arnett said to me earlier, he said that having an advocate in your situation is so important.
It is. It's very, very important because there's insurance now is more political than medical. And I have never been one for political anything. So I've got to take it to somebody who knows how to read that. And I'll read it and say, oh, yeah, it's this here. And they're like, no, it's not. That's not what they're asking. They're wanting this. And I don't get that.
Right.
So, yeah, you have to have somebody that knows what's going on with it.
How to navigate the system,
Right.
basically. And what do you want people to know about those who have lost a limb, the most important thing about you?
Most important thing about losing a limb?
Yeah, about living with it.
It's not the end.
Good.
It is not the end of your life. It's not the end of your work. It's not the end of anything. There are ways to get around things. There are things out there that can help you. I was bound and determined to go back to work. And unfortunately, my work is I drive 100 miles. I walk, a quarter of a mile carrying a backpack, and then I crawl around on floors and work on printers.
Right.
So, and that's not anything that a amputee, especially a leg amputee, should do.
I gotcha.
I had a lot of doctors tell me, you can't do that. You can't drive. You can't do this. You can't get down on the floor. You can't do this. And I'm like, no.
Don't say I can't. Don't say I can't. Yeah, yeah.
I will.
Exactly.
And so I drive. I crawl around on floors. Now, granted, my prosthesis kind of frowns on me when I say I've got to get down on because they got to build my leg in a different way than they normally do because I have to be able to stand on my knees.
Right.
And they're like, you're not supposed to do that. But I do. I have to.
Yeah.
So.
Well, thanks so much for sharing, Jason. We really do appreciate it. I want to thank Jason Istis and Elizabeth Flo and Jeff Arnett with Progressive Prosthetics and Orthotics for joining us today. This is Newsmakers on KGCS TV from the Ruth Colpin Studios here at Missouri Southern State University. And I'm Bobby Potroff. We'll see you again soon.